Good evening, my warmest friends. It was so good of you to come all this way. You must be dying to begin. It won't be long now. So rest. Rest in peace. I'll be coming for you soon. Oh, very soon. Your time has nearly come. Just a little farther now. Oh, roughly 6 feet or so. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I frighten you? Perhaps that was in bad spirit. Try to stay lively. Your wait is at an end. Make yourself comfortable and take one last look behind you. If knowing what's behind you will make you feel any better. As for me, I like to be surprised. Time to cross over now. So step inside my library and welcome to Ghost Stories for Grown-ups. Welcome, adventurous ones, to our library, full of stories that will thrill and chill. Let's begin in our Dead Files archives with news from Mabel.
Hi, I'm Mabel, and this is tonight's news from the Dead Files. Summer is upon us, and that means perennial favorites like baseball, BBQs, festivals, and amusement parks that may or may not be cursed. Tonight in our Dead Files, we will be exploring a few interesting amusements with a haunting past. Now, I'm sorry to disappoint our morbidly curious viewers, but I'm not talking about ride accidents. Sadly, deaths had happened due to improper maintenance, operator error, equipment malfunctions, and riders ignoring safety instructions. But these accidents aren't as frequent as you might think. According to a 2017 safety report published by the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions, for every 1 million rides, there was less than 1 injury. And the odds of suffering a fatal injury at a fixed-site amusement park is 1 in 750 million. You have better odds of being attacked by a shark, being struck by lightning, or getting tetanus in an abandoned amusement park. But what if the land the park sits on was cursed? Shawnee Lake Amusement Park in West Virginia is a popular spot with ghost hunters due to a tragic past going back to an 18th century blood feud between the original settlers and unhappy Native Americans, and possibly the ghost of a maiden living in the lake that pulls swimmers under the murky water, and a hidden Native American burial ground where the bones of mostly children would be disturbed. Quite the recipe for a cursing. So no wonder when Conley Snitto purchased the Shawnee Lake property in the 1920s, he likely inherited a few ghosts with warnings to relocate pronto. But Snitto developed the property into an entertainment oasis, including swimming holes, dance halls, rides, and alcohol. However, during its run over several decades, a number of deaths happened on or around the property, further fueling rumors of the land being cursed. After a second drowning occurred on property in 1966, the park never seemed to recover, and the likely coup de grace was when the Mercer County Health Department ordered the park closed until the swimming spots were cleared and an updated filtration system was installed. After that, Lake Shawnee sort of disappeared into the sunset, and Conley Snitto died in 1979. The park sat abandoned until some enterprising new owners in the 1980s realized the potential for a creepy, cursed amusement park, complete with dilapidated rides. Update your tetanus shots, people. Shawnee Lake owners sometimes open the park for haunted tours and Halloween attractions. Details can be found on the Mercer County Convention and Visitors website. But if you're looking for haunted amusements a little closer to home, check out our very own Kings Island in Mason, Ohio. In 1969, the Taft Broadcasting Company announced the sale of Cincinnati's Coney Island and the relocation of some of its rides to a new themed amusement park development alongside the Little Miami River. By 1970, construction for the park had begun, stirring up memories for the locals. The land the park would occupy not only had an overgrown cemetery hidden somewhere, but also had a long history of death and mayhem. In the 1870s, the King Powder Company established a plant on the property due to its proximity to the Little Miami River and the abundance of willow trees, which were used in the production of gunpowder. The King Powder Company operated on one side of the river, and a subsidiary named Peters Cartridge Company would be developed in the 1880s on the other side of the river to manufacture munitions. The King Powder Company built a town for its employees with amenities that were pretty upscale for the time period, like a gymnasium, library, electricity, and flush toilets. Every factory building, office, residence, and all the infrastructure was owned and operated by King. But as you can imagine, living so close to a gunpowder and ammunition plant could be risky business. Explosions happened often and usually with casualties. Area residents that were children when the plants operated were interviewed by Cincinnati Enquirer shortly after Kings Island opened. One resident, Edna Bowyer, was quoted as saying, "I couldn't say there was an explosion there every year. You couldn't tell when they were to come, but there were a lot." And then Warren County Sheriff Roy Wallace, who grew up in Kings Mills, remembered that we were used to hearing explosions at the powder plant. You grew up hearing explosions. One of the worst explosions in the company's history happened in 1890 when multiple train cars, two filled to the brim with gunpowder, collided, causing an explosion of such force that it was felt miles away. 19 buildings were destroyed in an instant, and survivors described debris raining down all across the community. 10 employees and residents were killed, including the brakeman of operating the rail cars. A local paper described him being as blown to atoms with nothing left of the body to recover. Scores of others were injured and the cartridge factory a complete loss. One eyewitness stated that some were burned and others were cut and bruised by the force of the explosion. To add to the terrible scene, there was a constant snapping of the cartridges, and the rescuers were in danger of being killed at any time. The factory was in the process of rebuilding when a few years later, lightning struck an iron-sided building, causing explosions and more death, including one unlucky operator of a gunpowder hopper, who wasn't directly killed by the explosion, but died when a bolt was loosened from the equipment and driven through his head. And then in 1942, when the plant was in high production for World War II, an explosion at Peters Cartridge Company claimed 5 more lives and again caused property damage miles away. The factory closed in 1944, and in 1958, what structures were left of King's Mills was so contaminated by gunpowder residue that all was purposely destroyed by fire, leaving behind metal and concrete structures like bridges and stairs that appear to lead to nowhere. The total loss of life during the operation of King Power and Peters Cartridge is said to be in the hundreds, and most of those deaths would have been sudden and violent. So, no wonder a few ghosts may have hung around when the Kings Island officially opened in 1972. Ghost sightings have appeared inside the park and all around the parking lot, but many believe that the most frequent ghostly visitor wasn't a gunpowder victim, but was buried in a cemetery that, thanks to Kings Island's construction, was rediscovered on the property in 1970. Its official name is Union Cemetery, though many locals know it as Dog Street Cemetery, and it dates back to the early 1800s. In October 1970, the Cincinnati Enquirer published a story by Irene Wright, recounting the difficulty of construction crews in finding the historic cemetery before excavation for the Kings Island parking lot would begin. Sadly, most of the grave markers were broken and unreadable, but one stone, marked with the name Missouri Jane, is believed to be the source of Kings Island's most popular unearthly attraction. Missouri Jane, age 5, has been spotted by employees and visitors throughout the park. Standing about 4 feet tall with blonde hair and in a blue old-timey dress. If you visit Kings Island in hopes of meeting Missouri, most frequent sightings appear around the cemetery, the parking lot, and the front gate. She's been reported to play tricks on the tram drivers, night guards, and the curious hoping to meet her. If cursed, haunted, or plain run-of-the-mill amusement parks aren't your thing, maybe adventure out into the world for a more original attraction like Wonderland Kalkar in Germany, whose signature ride occupies the remnants of an abandoned nuclear cooling tower. If that doesn't make your heart go boom, then how about Russia's Patriot Park, where the whole family can get up close and personal with heavy military equipment, including tanks and rocket launchers? AtlasObscura.com describes the park as a military Disneyland, and in their know-before-you-go information, they state there's also a zoo, which might be of interest to younger children too small to handle the surface-to-air missile launchers. What? If you're traveling without the kiddos and looking to generate a little more, perhaps consider Loveland in South Korea. Loveland contains some unique rides and statuary and... No, don't show this. That's all I'm going to say about that. Moving on. Those looking for a more spiritual connection, Photos.com features the Ha Par Villa theme park in their online article about the world's weirdest theme park. This educational park depicts scenes from Buddhist, Taoist, and Confucian lore. The highlight of the theme park is the 10 Courts of Hell, where visitors can witness loads of brutal punishments for various transgressions. The Photos article asks readers, where else can you see a tax evader crushed by a stone mallet, or an executioner disemboweling a student caught cheating in an exam? If looking for a warmer climate, maybe the IBOP playground in Italy might be more appealing. This amusement park is completely homemade by a local restaurateur who took up welding in his spare time and crafted attractions such as, the Bicycle of Death. But hey, entrance is free for anyone who eats at the restaurant. And then there's Bonbon Land in Denmark. Bonbon started as a candy factory with confections inspired inspired by various types of excrement. The successful operation expanded into an amusement park whose mascot is Henry the Farting Dog. The signature ride of the park is the Dog Fart Switchback roller coaster, where riders are blasted with explosive fart noises and oversized piles of dog poop litter the ground around the track. Other uniquely named rides translate into names like Seagull Blobs, the Horse Dropping, and the Skid Mark. That's all for Tales from the Dead Files, folks, where the truth is stranger in fiction, and I thought last time was going to be the last time I would talk about poop.
Thank you, Meg, for that amazing and amusing history. Now, please welcome our special guest, Amanda Warner, returning this evening with a story by Shawnee McGuire entitled Must Be This Tall to Ride. From the book Echoes, the Saga Anthology of Ghost Stories, edited by Ellen Datlow.
Must Be This Tall to Ride by Shawnee McGuire. There's a point at which sound becomes a physical thing with teeth and claws slashing wildly at everything around it. Brianna held the strap of her purse a little tighter and tried to stand fast against the assault coming from all sides, the fangs of the world biting into the soft flesh of her ears, dazing her and slowing her down. "Come on, Slowpoke!" Her sister's hand grasped her elbow, tugging her deeper into the midway, refusing to yield to the sound. Brianna didn't fight. It was easier if she let Cindy pick the direction and guide their activities. That way, all Brianna had to do was keep her knees from buckling as the roaring of the world crashed down on her head. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Anywhere. Everywhere. Loosen up, Bree. We're having an adventure." Brianna, who would have been happier if adventure had been something that happened to other people and left her out of it, didn't say anything. She just held on. The kids from school would have been amazed to see them now. The Harris kids at the carnival, both of them running through the crowds like they belonged, like they wanted to be there. Brianna felt a little smug about that. Everything was too loud and too bright and too much. But she was still there, still a part of the scene that was unfolding all around them. None of the people in this crowd were going to whisper behind their hands about how sad it was for Cindy to have such a freak for a sister, or how lucky their parents were to have at least one ordinary daughter, one daughter worth the effort required to love her. Never mind that Cindy didn't think there was anything wrong with Brianna. Never mind that Brianna was perfectly happy to be who she was and couldn't imagine wanting to be anyone else. She was still, and would always be, a social millstone dragging her sister to the bottom of the lake when she could have been skimming the surface like a queen. It couldn't be helped. But here they were, despite it all, running through the summer carnival like they didn't have a care in the world. It had appeared in the empty Target parking lot across from their hotel overnight, seeming to burst out of the concrete already assembled and ready to beguile. Their parents, worn out from escorting two teenage girls with radically differing ideas of fun across America's heartland, a road trip that had seemed inspired when it began and now seemed simply endless, the sort of thing devised as a punishment for some unspeakable crime, had been quick to press money into their hands and shoo them away, seeing the promise of peace in the sunlight glittering off the Ferris wheel. It was early enough in the day that the crowds were thin, at least compared to what they would swell into as the afternoon ripened toward the evening. And while the sound and spectacle was still enough to make Brianna's head spin, she could handle it if she kept her eyes on her sister and didn't try to look around. Cindy, who had been guiding Brianna through the world for their entire lives, didn't let go or slow down as she plunged forward, hauling her precious cargo in her wake like the world's blondest, bubbliest tugboat. I want to ride the scrambler, announced Cindy gleefully, and the roller coaster, and the centrifuge, and the Ferris wheel, and we don't have that many tickets, and we don't have the money for that many tickets. Well, I want to ride as many of them as I can. Brianna closed her eyes, letting Cindy pull her along, and did the silent math of the carnival's costs in the comforting dark. She stumbled, but didn't fall. She opened her eyes again. We can both do 2 rides, and then you can do 1 on your own. After that, we have to go back and shake Dad down for more cash. Cindy snorted. Their father would talk about how neither of them appreciate the value of $1, how when he'd been their age, he'd held down a steady after-school job and graduated high school ready to make his own way in the world. And then he would hand them each another $20 because he wanted their teen years to be happier than his had been. It was a predictable dance. She was fairly sure he'd given them insufficient funds entirely so they'd come back and verify that the carnival was both safe and enjoyable, rather than running off to the movies or something when they stopped having fun. Control of the finances was a viable way to maintain control over his twin daughters, but sometimes it was more annoying than he could possibly know. I don't want to ride the roller coaster, said Brianna. So we could start there, and then do the rides we do want to ride together. Sounds good, said Cindy, and changed her trajectory, now hauling her sister toward the rickety wooden frame of the coaster. It sucked to ride solo, but it would have sucked more not to ride at all, and Brianna didn't coaster. She'd tried once on their 9th birthday, verified that it was too much. The sound, the speed, the screaming, all of them mixed together into something she could neither enjoy nor endure. And since then, Cindy had either been riding alone or with other friends. It was okay. There were things Brianna could do that Cindy couldn't, like finishing her homework on time, and missing a few coaster rides was a small thing in the annals of sisterly sins. As long as they could share the Ferris wheel, everything else was negotiable. Cindy stopped running. Brianna stopped in turn, raising her eyebrows. Looks like nobody else wants to ride either, she said, and glanced around at the crowd. Maybe they know something we don't. It's lunchtime, said Cindy. Nobody rides a roller coaster at lunchtime. Her grin was wicked, sharp as a dart in the carney's hand. Good thing I haven't eaten yet. Come on. She ran into the empty corral that was meant to contain a queue and currently contained nothing but the bored-looking carnival employee who leaned against the coaster's controls, a baseball cap jammed down over her curly black hair. Brianna followed more reluctantly and saw the moment when the carney spotted Cindy, straightened, and put on her professional liar's face. She frowned. It was odd for a carney to stand that straight all because 2 towny girls were on the approach. Then again, so much about this carnival was odd. The rides were rickety, with peeling paint and blown-out bulbs. They were also overly large, more like something from an amusement park than the sort of rides she expected to see assembled in a parking lot overnight. The carnival even had an inversion loop and a tunnel. Who did that at a carnival? How was that safe? Welcome to the jaws of death, said the girl, rapid fire, accent an indistinguishable mix of a dozen states. She had Indiana vowels and Alabama declensions, and while she might have been a linguist's dream, to Brianna's ears she was blurry, like the lines of her weren't quite drawn correctly. 2? 1, said Cindy, unslinging her purse and thrusting it at Brianna. My sister doesn't like roller coasters. Some people don't, said the girl philosophically. She shrugged. There's always the Ferris wheel. Yes, there is, said Cindy. She took a step toward the coaster, still holding out her purse. Brianna grabbed her arm. No. Cindy stopped, blinking. What do you mean? I mean no. I mean, let's go ride the Ferris wheel. Brianna tugged. It's not right. Something isn't right. It was in the shape of the coaster, the way it arched against the sky, the way it wasn't moving. All the other rides were moving. This one should have been moving too, should have been seasoning the air with screams that hurt her ears. It wasn't. It was wrong. Honey, Cindy deftly worked her arm free, somehow shifting her purse into Brianna's hand at the same smooth gesture. I get that you don't like roller coasters, honest I do, but you need to chill. I'll be back in 5 minutes tops. She whirled then, holding a fistful of bills out to the carny. One, please. I'm sorry, said the carny. We only take tickets here. Cindy's face fell, and Brianna's heart leapt up to catch it. It was going to be okay. It was going to be okay. Cindy wouldn't ride, and they would walk away, But since you're my first customer of the day, why don't you have one on the house? The carny continued smiling, her midway dark smile, as she gestured grandly toward the coaster train. Your chariot awaits. Brianna grabbed for Cindy's arm again. It was too late. Cindy was past listening to her objections, past caring about what she wanted. Cindy was going to ride, and it was going to be glorious. She dropped herself into the car and pulled the safety bar down over her head. And if the carny's smile was a sharpened dart, hers was a balloon, bright and beautiful and ready to burst. Away we go, intoned the carny, and jabbed her finger down on the button that would send the train creaking down the track, gathering speed as it went. Brianna clutched her sister's purse against her chest and watched the train move, unable to shake the feeling that something was terribly, impossibly wrong. The sounds of the carnival seemed almost muffled now, heard through a wall of cotton, not nearly as overwhelming as her dread. The train slipped into the tunnel's mouth, vanishing from sight. The carny turned to face Brianna, removing her hat so that her hair cascaded down in a cotton candy cloud. And she wasn't smiling now. No, she wasn't smiling at all, although her mouth was still a dart waiting to be thrown. Everything about her was a weapon, and all of her was aimed at Brianna. The track broke, she said matter-of-factly, like this made all the sense in the world. 7 years ago, it broke, and the train came off the rails and slammed into the loading area. Everyone on the train died, along with 2 carnies. You would have heard about it on the news if you'd been from around here. You would never have stopped to ride a coaster at this carnival because you'd know we didn't have one. Brianna's legs were rotten timbers, shaking, threatening to drop her to the ground even as they refused to let her move. It's funny, though, continued the carny. Sometimes a big enough blood sacrifice comes with certain compensation. People like to make jokes about carnivals being dangerous, but the fact is it wasn't their fault. It wasn't our fault. There was a flaw in the steel, nothing the safety checks could have caught. It could have happened to anyone. It could have happened to Disneyland. I guess we drew the low card in the deck that day, but since then there haven't been any accidents. There haven't been any deaths. There haven't even been any major injuries, except the carny looked meaningfully to the coaster. In the distance, Brianna could hear her sister's joyful screams. They weren't terrified yet. That part was coming. You're lying, Brianna said, even though she knew the woman wasn't. No line for the roller coaster on the first day of the carnival. The way the sound of the midway was muffled, like the world was far away. This was a bad place. This was a wrong place. If you like, said the carny, that would be the easy choice. Choice? Said Brianna. I don't usually get 2 people on the platform, so yeah, choice. Calmly, the carny looked at Brianna and asked, does the train crash into the parking lot or the platform? Heads, she dies. Tails, you do. Choose. Or decide this is a lie and walk away. That's a choice too. Blood sacrifices have to be renewed. Once every 7 years, there has to be a reminder of what we've paid and what doesn't have to happen anymore. If the train crashes into the platform, you'll die too. Too late for that. I said 2 carnies died, remember? The carny turned, seeming to track the progress of the train with the motion of her head. Now I make sure the sacrifice gets renewed. I keep us safe. Almost out of time. Choose. Brianna knew which choice she was supposed to make, the choice the stories had been sketching out for her since she was old enough to understand that she was odd. She's supposed to say that she's the strange one. She's the one who doesn't quite fit in, and stand aside in favor of her sister who could live a normal life without all the tangles and trappings of Brianna's neurology. She also knew that, supposed to or not, she couldn't live with being the reason her sister was gone. And Cindy, normal or not, could never live with being the reason that Brianna was dead. Cindy was the only reason she was standing there for the train to crush. One way or the other, one of them wound up with blood on her hands, and all to pay. Brianna smiled, looking at the carny, and said, "No." The carny blinked. "What?" "No. I don't know if you're a ghost or a demon, and I don't care. Cindy took a ride because you told her she could have one. She didn't pay for it. You said that sometimes a blood sacrifice comes with compensation. Well, everyone who died on the train paid to be there. Everyone who died on the platform worked for the carnival. You made contracts. You made promises. Cindy didn't. She lives, and I take my sister home." Brianna was shaking by the end, her hands clenched by her sides, and her heart pounding. The carny blinked again. Then, slowly, she smiled that sharpened dart smile and said, "Clever. You ever want a job, little girl? Just climb to the top of the nearest Ferris wheel and convince yourself that you can fly." Then she was gone, winked out in an instant, leaving the roller coaster unattended. Brianna made a sound that was somewhere between a scream and a squeal as she launched herself at the controls. The train came rolling around the corner. She slammed her hand down on the stop button, and it rolled safely up to the platform, its lone passenger laughing through the tangle of her hair. The sounds of the carnival rushed back in, returning to their previous volume, and Brianna fought the urge to clap her hands over her ears. Cindy kept laughing as she climbed out of the train and walked to where Brianna waited. She frowned, slowing to a stop. "Where's the ride operator?" she asked. "I'll tell you when we get back to the hotel," said Brianna. She grabbed Cindy's hand, pulling her away from the roller coaster that wasn't there, and this time she was the one pulling her sister through the crowd, keeping her safe from all its dangers, and she didn't look back, not even once. Not even once. On the platform, the carny reappeared, hat once again seated firmly on her head, and leaned against the platform housing the ride's controls. The season was young. There was plenty of time to pay for another 7 years of good luck. And if there was one thing every carnival kid learned early, it was that nothing would ever replace word of mouth. Those girls would talk. The thrill seekers and the ghost hunters would listen, and they would come, and sooner or later one of them would split off from the herd, would see a ride that wasn't there, would hand over their ticket. Over and over, until it was time to let someone else get away, to set the lure again. "You must be at least this tall to ride," she said, and laughed. Outside on the midway, the Ferris wheel turned, and the crowd roared on.
How thrilling. Our resident ghoul was so inspired by our stories this evening that he penned the following original work.
Scares, festivals, and not so amusement park. Nothing says summer like rides, games, and scares. From theme parks to festivals, to state and county fairs. All have things that make us all ooh and ah, but only the best can bring in a massive draw. The lights, the sounds, the ooh, what's that smell? Cotton candy? Corn dog? Or do I dare tell? No matter if it's a carny or a teen pulling levers, they can make the ride quick or go on forever. Coasters that roll and flip, dive and turn, faded carousels that look like they've burned. Lots of strange happenings occur once it's dark. The biggest mystery, though, is where did you park? Be it famous brown dog yellow or talkative shark red, after walking forever, your feet will be dead. There's so much to see and do in all these places, from eating yourself sick to watching people paint faces. Is that supposed to look like seagull poo? No? Well, you hadn't started yet. Got it. Sorry. Looks great. Really. Really. So it differs between day and night, from dancing cartoon dogs to clowns that cause fright. Another big difference is the smells of stuff to eat. At night, after it rains, it all smells like feet. From islands of kings to points made of cedars, all of them at times have their own personal creepers. Tests of strength and balance and feats of pure skill. Swinging boat rides that could make Vikings feel ill. Bug-eyed stuffed animals with arms stretched out wide. The characters and clowns that make kids run and hide. There are also lots of things for us ghosts to do. Work the graveyard shifts with a skeleton crew. Some ghosts just lounge there, others try to leave. But just like the living, losing their rides gets them peeved. Some ghouls have jobs scaring riders, some even better. But I work the tilt-a-hurl as a pixie dust spreader. Oh man, again? How could so much come out of something so small? Did you feed that kid? You know there was a height and age limit. Man, I'm too old for this. What else am I gonna do? Not like I can haunt a library. Oh, wait. Now hiring ghoul for Plain City Public Library. Who do I give my resume to? Is that Mabel with one bell?
Oh, ghoul, amusing as always. Well, this concludes tonight's program. But don't let this be farewell. Only goodbye until next time. Until then, please be nice to spiders. Have tea with the ghost in your attic. And don't forget to feed the monster under your